Russell. I'm an advanced diver, dive instructor and trainer for the British Tobacco Club. Like many of you, I want to know what our life's love diving has been through. I will be exploring the vast history of diving apparatus, delving into the various situations breathing underwater was used for, from the dawn of the first diving apparatus to the development of the military diving suits, looking into the deep corners of diving society, seeing how we evolved and widened our knowledge to conquer the underwater realm.
Diving can date back to 1000 BC, when a technique involved plummeting to depths of 30 metres or more by holding a heavy rock. Of course, not knowing about the anatomy of equalisation, they poured oil into their ear canal. Once at the bottom, they collected as many sponges as possible, where they were then pulled to the surface by the tether. It wasn't until 1820 a man saved a stock of horses using a fire engine pipe with air and an old medieval helmet. This man was John Dean. Once saving the stock and surviving, he realised he could use this invention for firemen and divers, although his invention did have a failure. The helmet wasn't attached properly to the suit, just from using waist straps. Most historical records focus on Augustus Seaby. He refined Dean's design by inventing an efficient way of sealing the helmet to the suit and improving the exhaust system. By 1840, the Seaby improved diving dress was introduced. Seaby went on to found Seaby Gorman and Company, one of the most famous diving companies in the world. It was this diving dress that went on to become the famous predecessor of the deep sea diving dress familiar to everyone. The helmets are made from beaten copper and have two main parts, the bonnet and the corselet, which are joined together at the neck. The faceplate is misted. The diver can open a spitcock valve, take a mouthful of water, spit at the faceplate to clear it. This standard helmet was adapted to improve its use for deep diving. The breathing gas being partially recycled, a back-mounted canister containing soda sorb, allowing the carbon dioxide to be removed. Communication with the diver has always been a main obstacle. However, throughout history, humans have developed ways of communicating. Rope signals were used to indicate whether the diver needed more rope or if he needed to be pulled back to the surface. This will always be a useful failsafe, even during these days. The most popular invention was the hard wire technique, brought in around 1900s. Once electronic telephones were invented, it was adapted for use of divers. Of course, this will constantly be developed, heightening the quality of voice communication between the divers and the surface. The final form of communicating was using the water. Being that it is a good conductor of sound pressure waves, it's become possible to transmit voice sounds directly into the water while the diver picks them up with the use of special headgear that have been used with varying success since the 1960s. Although in more recent days, the most used way of visual communication is through surface marker buoys and delayed surface marker buoys. Both are a way of telling those on the surface the diver's whereabouts, though the best part about them is how deploying a yellow delayed surface marker buoy will automatically tell those on the surface either yourself or your body are in danger. Divers are regularly used in the Royal Navy. In the earlier times, divers sabotaged their enemy's boats through breaking holes in the bow of the boat, but this became all the more dangerous when the human torpedoes took over. This was an underwater craft developed in the Second World War to attack ships in enemy harbours. First conceived by the Italians, it was adopted by the British after their own ships were damaged, the Valiant and Queen Elizabeth, by the torpedo invention in 1941. The invention was driven by electronic batteries, which was manned by a crew of 2 divers, a driver at the front and a bomb fixer at the back. A charge that was similar to a torpedo warhead was attached to the nose. The torpedo vessel would travel at a slow speed. Once under the enemy vessel, the pillion diver would dismount, detach the charges from the torpedo and fix them to the ship's hull. He would set the fuses and return to the vehicle. The driver would try as hard as he can to steer the torpedo clear of the vessel before the charges detonated. These divers were called chariotees and wore the Sladen suit, developed by Commander Geoffrey Slade. The Sladen suit, nicknamed the Clammy Death, was developed purely for human torpedoes in 1944. All that was needed was a watertight suit that allowed divers to move freely below water. Commander Geoffrey Sladen developed a solution that became the Sladen suit. The fabric was lightweight and similar to that of the standard diving wear. The main issue was that the clothing wasn't elastic. Instead, Commander Sladen incorporated a modified midriff consisting of a tubular skirt at the front for entry and exit. This skirt was watertight, and by folding it in a particular fashion and then clamping down on it between the two brass rectangular plates bolted tight on each end, it was thought to not have any leakage. The neck was tailored, incorporating a moulded rubber hood with a manually operated exhaust valve fitted on the crown. A full face mask was built into the hood, allowing it to be airtight, then being completed with adjustable straps of various sizes. The torment of this was the discomfort of wearing it in warm confines of a submarine, where sweat completely drenched the wearer, which then led to a cold exit later. This earned it the nickname of the Clammy Death. When underwater, the most important thing for a diver to keep an eye on is how much air they and their buddy have left. As was said before, with the traditional one-piece suit, air was firstly breathed through a long pipe that went back to the surface and was pumped by those on the boat. This was further developed once learning of gas mixtures and pressures. The air was compressed into a hard metal cylinder with freely running valves that ran to the regulator that was held in the mouth. Although when delving deeper than 50 metres, a change of gases are needed because nitrogen causes a narcotic effect commonly known as the narcs. The worst would be what is called the bends, previously known as raptures of the deep. If a diver ascends too quickly, the nitrogen dissolved within his or her body won't have time to diffuse. It will in fact bubble inside the victim's body, causing them to have decompression sickness. To avoid this, divers use watches, depth gauges and diving tables to control their time at depth. Divers regularly pause at certain intervals during their ascent, allowing the nitrogen to diffuse. Mixed gas saturation divers have found a way in which they cheat the bends by living for days on end in a compression chamber below the surface when they are working at deep depths, breathing a helium-oxygen atmosphere and diving gas. Final decompression at the end of their stay in the United Kingdom is at 28 days maximum. A bit like diving gear, diving chambers and bells were also developed. The first successful salvage operations consisted of a one-person diving bell in 1531. This device only provided a short amount of time as it only carried the air that was captured within it before submerging. These bells range from 1939 to 1979. This deep compression chamber has earned its name by allowing divers to go 690 metres below the surface. This was installed in Alverstoke in 1969. It has achieved several world records in deep diving, has performed many experiments on deep submarine escape. There are two escape doors on either end that can be sealed tight. Between these, there is a little amount of space that the divers would live in. The interior of this diving bell is cramped more so than the compression chamber. These bells were used in support of the offshore oil and gas industry in the North Sea. It normally operated at 120 to 180 metres. All supplies such as air, communications, heating and power were fed through the umbilical cord. The cylinders outside were in case of an emergency. This large stainless steel ring around the porthole contains lead, which can be released in the event of an emergency by operating a lever inside the bell. It goes without saying Diving has a unique background with many strands, proving just how we as humans have evolved to conquer the underwater